Alright, so how to wire a light switch. First of all, seasoned electricians are going to laugh at my wiring here because first, I've got way too much sticking out here and I do end up trimming a lot. My philosophy is it's better to have a little too much than a little too little, because if you got too little you got a big problem. You can see I sourced my electrical out of an outlet, and I'll show in a different video how to do that. That's really easy. This is, if this were live, then this would be fully live too, but that one's not live. And that's going up to my light on the ceiling, and you can see it goes right to there. And so I got a wire stripper. These are pretty cool. I'm glad I discovered these. You can see what happens here. You put that over like that, and then you squeeze it tight. It's got a little barb there that cuts. So put that over, go right in as far as you can go. This is going through here and it's clamped down there, so this is screwed down tightly, so the wire is clamped in place. So when I pull this, it's not going to pull on there, and I just push it together tightly and pull it out. But it's way safer. I used to do this with like a carpet knife, a utility knife, until I discovered the wire stripper. So now you can pull it right back to the bottom there, and then just cut that off with your utility knife right there. It's way safer than using a knife to strip that, and it's way easier too. So I'm going to strip the other one now. Alright, so stripped out. Like I said, the real electricians are going to laugh at me because I got so much wire here. That's fine, I don't care. Couple of things. Black is hot and white is neutral, and the bare ones are ground. Sometimes the bare will have cardboard over them, like paper over them. Lumex, which is what I have here, usually does not have paper over them. Romex in the US will typically have paper over it. Now, one thing I don't recommend, I don't like personally, so they renamed these actually about 6 or 7 years ago. It used to be the case that the ones with the spring inside that don't have the two-piece, they used to be called Marette, and then the one here with the two-piece one where you screw the wires into here and then screw that on top, that used to be called a Mar. But now for some reason they're all called Marettes. I think it's stupid. I used to like the distinction between the two, and I always used to recommend to people always use a Mar and never use a Marette. This is a Marette. I don't like the Marettes. You twist the wires together and then you just twist that on the end and you leave it, and I've tried those and they're always falling off. I think they're terrible. This has a little screw. You can see the insert. Let me see. So this insert screws into there, and then in the insert there's a little screw. Where's my screwdriver? There's my screwdriver. There's a little screw in the insert, and you stick your wires in through there. That's plenty of room with that number 2 to get 4 of my 14 gauge. You tighten it up to keep all the wires in there nice and snug, and then you put your cap over it and screw the cap on. See, these has threads on the side that match the threads in the cap. Always used a two-piece one. I guess they're all called Marettes now. Always used a two-piece one. Don't use the one with the little spring inside of it. They're kind of crappy. Okay, like I said, these are way too long. The whites, we're just going to bind them together. So what I'm going to do is cut off the length. Here's a wire stripper. It's got the different gauges down here. 14 gauge is probably there. You only want to strip off like 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch, so like maybe a centimeter. Give it a little twist and then pull, and see it strip that wire right off. You can see that stripped it right off. So it's got the little positions for the different gauge of wire, thicker and thinner wire. Give it a little twist and pull, comes right off. Alright, that bit fits. Now I'm going to take my insert loosen up the screw, and the thread on the insert, see the thread is on the top, it's wider at the top, that part goes over the wires first. So we put that on there, and I take and tighten up the little screw on it. Now sometimes that's going to be really hard to get it tight enough, so you want to grab the insert with a pair of needle nose pliers depending on what you're doing, and that'll help you tighten it better. You won't be able to get that tight with just your fingers. And then the bits that are sticking out the end, you can see my wires are sticking out the end of the insert a little bit, and I'm just going to cut that off with my pliers. And now I put the external part on. So light switch, you bind your whites together. That's what I've just done there. Bind the whites together, get that far into the box because we don't need it anymore. But try not to interfere with my binding points for my ground. We're going to get to that momentarily. Alright, I just want to give you a close-up of what that looks like when it's pushed out of the way there. You can see I still have access to my screw for grounding the box, but the wires are short enough that they don't take up a lot of room, and they're just pushed out of the way there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to cut these off. You can see those are really long. We're going to cut them off, and I'm going to use one of them as my pigtail. So this one is longer. I'll use it as my pigtail. Whoops, I just dropped it. So your pigtail is going to be the piece that connects to the box. And what you do is you take your needle nose pliers, you give that a 180-degree twist like that. So it's going to go over the screw in there. That's probably not wide enough. I should have gone a little bit further up on the pliers. There we go, that's a little bit wider. And then you give it a little turn like this. So it's 90 degrees. And then you can hook that onto the... Now when you're doing it, remember that when you tighten a screw, you tighten righty-tighty clockwise. So you want the hook going clockwise. You don't want the hook going counterclockwise because that will tend to fall off as it's being tightened. So I will take that little screw in there, I just loosen it up. I probably want to have an extra hand here or something. So I just loosened up the screw that you see here, and what I want to do, the reason why I kept this at a 90-degree angle, you can see I can get that in there, hook it right over that screw, and what I want to do is pull down to keep that tight on there, and I won't be able to do this because I don't have three hands. Pull that down with my finger. You can see I've got the pigtail coming in here. Pull it down with my finger while I'm tightening that screw. Let's see. No, I can't do that while I'm showing you, but I think you get a picture of what I mean. That way you are absolutely certain. Actually, I don't think that's going to come off of there. It's on pretty good because of the bend I have in it. So normally I would be pulling down on this pigtail while I'm tightening this in order to ensure that it doesn't come loose from the screw. But I think I've got it just about perfect that it's not going to anyway. So there, it's nice and tight now. And now we have these three grounds that have to be put together with a nut. Now we're taking all three of these, get them so their ends are all about the same and they're all pointing in the same direction, so they're not pointing every which way. So just bend them around a bit, do that. The part here, the wider part, goes on first, like I already said with the last one. The wider part goes on first, and you You can give it the initial tighten with just your fingers on there, and then it's going to get too tight for your fingers. You grab that with your needle nose pliers. I'm a little bit awkward here just because I'm trying to let you see what's going on. It's giving me a bit of an awkward angle there. Hold that tight, tightening up the screw. That's wonderful. Now those are only sticking out of there, oh gosh, 3 millimeters or so, so I don't even got to cut them off. It's grounded. The ground is going up to my light. The box is grounded. As I already said, this switch doesn't have a ground on it, so I don't have to worry about it. Now all we have to do is connect these two, connect the two hots to the switch. Alright, I'm just showing you the other angle here. You want to be sticking out of that. I'm just showing you how much to cut off. Oh, you can see 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters. I'm going to actually take a little bit more than that. If I were a professional electrician, I'd probably go about 1 inch. I'm going to go about 1.5 inches, so, or about 4 centimeters. That's where I'm going to cut those wires off. And you can see there's quite a bit of wastage there. If I were a professional, I would be wasting a lot of money and my boss wouldn't be very happy with me. But I'm not, and I don't really care too much. So I'm going to trim it off about there. About there, 4 centimeters sticking out. And I'm just going to take off about 3/4 of an inch or about 1 centimeter, the same way I did with the whites. So we're just going to find the right spot on here. Take off about that much off of both of those fellas. Comes off really easily. Make your loop. Make your loop. Remember that how tight your loop is determined by how far up on the needle nose pliers you go. If you go way up here, you're going to make a bigger loop, and that'll depend on how big your screw is, what gauge you're working with. Alright, it says right here top. I can see it written right here, top. So again, top. I'll loosen these guys up a bit. And so I have those both hooked on there, and I just tighten them in. I'm sorry I got the wrong angle and you can't see what I'm doing here. So they're nice and tight, both of them. And now we're ready. You can see the switch itself has these 2 screws, top and bottom. You start screwing those in. Now before you push this in, you give a little bend in the wire here, in your wire. Sometimes if this is a socket, you've got 4 wires hanging off it potentially or more. Give them a push, give them a little bend up, a bend down, that'll help it push in better. Just give it a push in to make sure it's going to go. And now start these screws, the top and the bottom. Give them about 5 turns each and then alternate. Don't put one in all the way and then the other. You give them like, I've got repetitive strain injuries on my wrists, so this isn't fun. I should have a little electric screwdriver or something. Now you want to make sure before you tighten those right up, which I did on that one, before you tighten them right up, get this lined up, take your faceplate. Where the hell did my faceplate go? Take your faceplate and line it up. Make sure your holes in your faceplate are lined up here, and that lines up your switch for you because it has a lot of play this way and this way. And whoops, I just lost it there. And I'll tighten those up. Tighten them up a little bit just so it's not going to move. And recheck my faceplate. We're right on there, so I'll tighten those up the rest of the way and we're good to go. And then we'll just put our faceplate on. There, that part's done. Okay, now that we've lined up our faceplate, everything's good to go. We got our 2 little screws. These are usually slots for some reason. You can start one just to pin it in place. Whoops. Hello. There we go. This is where you find out if you've installed the box correctly, and just tighten them up. If your box is too far back, this isn't going to be flush. Now, normally you would leave space for drywall, but I'm not drywalling my shed. This is my shed. I'm not going to drywall it. This is just good like this. So, we're done.